Yeah. Good morning, everyone. And we are going to speak about a interesting topic. It's a bit of a business ethics topic in Torah law. It actually has a social application as well. And the subject is called Genevas Das, or Genevat Dat. Now, that is interesting. It literally means stealing another person's heart, emotions, understanding. It actually it immediately means some type of misleading or deception, and it has a social application as well as a commercial application. One of the main sources for this is actually in the story of Avshalom in the book of Shmuel. It talks about how King David's son Avshalom started a rebellion against his father and started a civil war. And the way he did it, and the whole story, the whole background, why he did it, it's a different story, which don't think we'll get to today. But the way he started this rebellion against his father was that the pasuk says in Shmuel that the king in those days, King David, wasn't just the king, wasn't just a general, he was also a judge. And people had come from all over to judgment by the king. And Avshalom would stand outside the palace, and when people come in who had a judgment, they had some litigation against someone else, Avshalom would go by them and say, "Hi, what's your name? Where are you from?" And they said, "We're from one of the cities in Israel." And he'd say, "What's your business here?" And he'd say, "Well, I have this judgment." And he would listen. Avshalom would listen to him and say, "Oh, I feel so bad for you. I realize that you're right. That what you're saying is 100% right. And I wish someone would make me to be the judge here. That people could come in and I'd help them help them get to the bottom and be vindicated." And he was a very handsome person. He was like a flawless and he was a very good-looking person. And that way he won the hearts of all of Israel by doing this. And when time came, he sort of started a civil war, and he had a lot of backers because of this practice that he was doing. Now that is an example of Genevas Das, because he was not sincere at all in what he was saying. He could probably say the same thing as the other litigant in that case. But through this insincere speech, he was able to win people's hearts over to his side. And that's called Genevas Das. Now there are various practical examples, which the Gemara says in Chulin. The Gemara says, Amar Shmuel Asr Lingnav Das Tabiras Filo Daiter Shel Oivik Achavim. It's forbidden to mislead someone, whether they're Jewish or non-Jewish. It makes every single human being. One can't steal, but even not to deceive is also forbidden. There are various examples, and these are a lot of social applications. And it goes like this. Tanya, hire Rabbi Meir Omer. Rabbi Meir would say, you shouldn't sort of excessively ask someone, "Can you dine with me? Can I take you out?" And you know that there's no way that he can possibly do it. Let's say someone came here to Annapolis. He has a meeting here, and you know he's coming for a lunch meeting. There's no way he can possibly ever. He doesn't have the time for it. And just say, "Come, can I take you out? Please," you're begging him to, and you know he can't. So why are you doing that? So this person's doing it because he wants to make him feel that he's being so friendly, and maybe he owes him something for being so warm. It's really not genuine at all. And because he's going to owe him something he's going to feel beholden to him for being so friendly, even though that wasn't true. Murray says you shouldn't give someone a big gift if you know he won't accept it. And if you have some lotion used to anoint people with oil. So you have this empty jar of oil and say, "Can I give you some oil? You want to apply some oil?" And it's an empty jar, right? So he doesn't know that, but he's going to think you're really sincere. He's going to feel he's owed you something, but he really doesn't. These are examples of Genevas Das, of misleading someone for your benefit. the other thing was, sometimes in a mourner's house, people would go and they would bring food and drink to the mourner. And so imagine this case. Everyone's by this mourner's house, and someone walks in with like 3 big jars of wine or juice or something, and everyone's like, they're clinging them together, and it looks like he's really being very generous. Truth is, these jars are really like very, very empty or filled with water or something. It's not real. He's not really giving anything, but he's making himself look as if he's being very generous. Another person might, and the mourner might feel like he owes him something, and it's not really true. These are examples of Gnevas Das. Now, one interesting example, which practically speaking, is, let's talk about a different case. Let's say someone has a relative who is in the hospital, and the hospital is like an hour away. And so he goes on a trip, goes an hour out, and goes to visit his relative, and in there he bumps into someone who, he's from the shul. He knew he was sick, didn't know he happened to be at the hospital, and it just happens to be that he happened to be there. The person's saying, well, thank you so much. We had such a big trip out to visit me. I'm so, thank you. You didn't have to do that. And he feels so grateful. And so that might be a Gnevas Das question. Should you say, I just happened to be there, it wasn't real? So there's another story in this Gemara which addresses that case. And the story goes like this, that Rava and Rav Safra were traveling. They were 2 great sages. They were traveling from Machoza, Bei Machoza, to this other city in Babylonia, to Sichra. And on their way, they're on the road, and they are meeting someone who's going from Sichra to Machoza. His name was Mar Zuter Breder of Nachman. He was a grandson of the Reish Galusa. He was a prominent Jewish official. The Jewish had self-autonomy in Babylonia during that time, and he was like part of the leading case of people. He was like a part of that family. And he said, well, thank you so much. You didn't have to go out of your city to greet me. You went on the road, able to greet me as I was coming in. And he thought that they were going out to greet him. They were just really going on their own way. They had their business in that other city. So Rav Safra was he was legendary to be a very truthful person. He said, no, we actually didn't know that you were coming. If we would have known, we would have traveled even farther to greet you. We didn't even know that you were coming. So as they left, Rava said, why did you tell him that? He said, you were achlishti. You made him feel bad. He thought you were honoring him and coming and greeting him, and you burst his bubble. You said, no, we just happened to be going our ways. You shouldn't have told him that. And he said, he said, but we would have been fooling him. He made a mistake. If I wouldn't have said anything, he would have thought that really we made a lot of effort to greet him. He would have felt he owed us something for this. So he said, no, he was fooling himself. You didn't tell him anything. He assumed you're going to greet him. You didn't tell him that. He made his own assumption that's his own issue. So if you come into this case, let's go back to the case we're talking about, if you go into the hospital. So in that case, based on this Gemara, you shouldn't say, yeah, I made a big trip, I really wanted to see you. You shouldn't say that you did that, that isn't why you made that trip. But you shouldn't tell him that I just happened to be there. Maybe he'll feel bad. So the best practice to do is to change the subject. How are you doing? You sort of don't answer that question that way. It actually once happened to me. I had the bris of a cousin of mine, and I happened to in a different city. Happened to be in that same city just from another occasion, and I just showed up at the bris, and they might have wondered, what I was doing there. But I guess if I didn't say anything, you could assume that. Now this saying nothing and letting them assume is not something you can always do. The Gemara there says another example, that they used to have barrels of wine which they would open up, and especially for prominent people. So they used to have barrels of wine. Now when you open up a barrel of wine, it has a shelf life. From the time you open it up and you start taking the contents out, it starts turning into vinegar after didn't have a lot of preservatives back then. So you sort of kept it closed until you were ready to finish that barrel. But if you had a prominent person, you'd open up a new barrel for him, that way it would be stronger. So the Brisa says, don't open up this barrel if you actually sold this barrel to a store and you're gonna give them the whole barrel after you're finished with it, then don't just open up this barrel for someone who's coming to visit you, because he'll think that you're opening up for him and you're losing on his behalf. You're just trying to honor him with like a new barrel, and really you're not losing anything, because you're just gonna give the rest of the barrel to the store and you won't be having any loss in his account. So Tosa says, even though you're not telling him anything, Tosa says that if there's no way the person could have known, let's say he could have not have known in any way that you didn't come to visit him. In the case that he should have assumed maybe you're doing your own business then you can just let him make his mistake. But if he had no way of knowing and he's no way of not being deceived, then one should speak up. Now, the other example, these are all social type of misleading. There's also a monetary misleading. And that is, let's say you're selling a car, okay? Now, you know there's some defect with this car. Like, let's say the mirrors, the side mirrors, they like don't turn, like that button doesn't move. And it's a very minor defect, probably not a lot of money, it's a second-hand car anyways. And let's say you're not even defrauding with anything, because you'll charge him a lower price because of that. But you don't tell him about it. He doesn't know that it doesn't work. So the rule is that if you're selling something and here's a defect, you should let the buyer know about that defect. Even if you're charging him less for it. Even if it's not an issue charging him more for it, but he shouldn't think that you're giving him something that you're not giving him. The exact parameters of what's a minor defect, a major defect, it might be a bit of a gray area, but that's the general rule. That's how this applies in a monetary way. Now, the Gemara, very interesting thing is that the Gemara says that the Tosefta says that Gnevus Das is actually, in a sense, worse than normal theft. It brings the story of Avshalom. Misleading someone, getting his goodwill by false means is worse than normal theft. And the question is why? Like, you're not stealing any money really, so why is it worse? So I had the following thought. To a certain extent, money, although it's very valuable and it's very helpful, it's external to a person. Like, you're not your money. Your money helps you, but it's not you. Your thoughts, your emotions, your worldview, that's more like you. So if someone deceives someone else and makes him think he's his friend and he's not really, or makes him feel he owes him something and he's not really, fooling someone like that is actually stealing more of his emotions, more his being. And in that aspect, it's worse than stealing money, because the money is external to him, this is internal. And so, by the way, even though you can't sort of invite someone over with excessively, if you know he can't go, but it's sort of like without just giving a polite invitation, or it's like common etiquette is allowed if you're able to do that. Like if you have this jar of oil which has oil in it, and he could take it if he wants, then you can offer it to him, because you're just being nice, and you would want to give him if he would want to take it. It's only if you're giving him a lavish gift and he won't take it, or giving him a very extended, a very warm invitation and he's not going to accept it, then that's a problem. But if you're able to give it and you have that would be allowed. I'll just quote the Rambam on this. This is sort of like the Rambam quotes the halacha. Aser l'adam hanig atzim b'divrei chalak zu pitui. This is the Rambam, Perek Deus, Perek Beis Lachavav. Person cannot act in ways of smooth talking and fooling people. You shouldn't be one way in your heart and one way with your mouth. Your inside should be like your outside. What you're thinking in your heart should be what you're saying as well. You cannot mislead people. You can't sell someone who's not Jewish meat which is not kosher, and he thinks that it's like kosher meat. He thinks you're giving him something which is like sort of worth more to you, and it's really not kosher. And so because then he might think you're giving him something more than he's really getting. Don't give him a type of shoe made from one type of leather and it's really a different type. And don't invite someone to eat by you and you know he can't eat by you. Don't give him a lot of gifts, you know he can't accept it. Don't open the barrels that you would have to open them to sell it anyways, and you think you're honoring him and anything like that. Even when one word of this is forbidden, truthful speech, a correct spirit of Lev Torah, a pure heart, from every type of deception and trickery. So, now the truth is, I'll just conclude with a very interesting story. So there was someone who made a bris. Someone had a son, and the bris came out to be on Purim. And so he goes and decides he's going to name his child Mordechai. So he calls him, names his child Mordechai. A couple weeks later, he gets a letter from a relative, from his uncle, letter with a check attached. And the letter goes like this: thank you so much for naming your son Mordechai. If you know that I have a brother with that name and he passed away recently, and I'm so happy you named your son Mordechai after my brother, and here's a check for the occasion, like a very nice check. So the question was, could you take the check? Like, how do you deal with that? Was it misleading? How do you deal with that? So in one sense, it is a certain aspect of, as we learned, iudate anafshe, a certain amount of self-deception because he sort of made his own mistake. But when the poskim, this was asked to some rabbis, what they said was they had different ideas how to deal with this. They were like, maybe like even though you didn't have an intention when you made the bris, but maybe now you could sort of think his name is also for that uncle, and that way you could accept the money different ways. It seems that once you're dealing with money, the parameters are a little more strict, and so maybe if you only receive money with a certain precondition, might be a little different. So that is the thing. That's the end. And so yeah,
let's
sure.
Say you tell him with the money. Let's say you tell him you tell him the truth. You call the uncle.
Right.
You say,
right.
Okay, and he says, keep the money.
Right.
Then are you okay?
Absolutely okay. Some people said another approach was you should mail the check back and say, we appreciate the gift, but that wasn't the intent. We gave the name. And then if the uncle wants to send it back, that's fine as well.
If the uncle says to keep it, you're allowed.
Right, that's fine.
Okay.
And I'll just say one other point here, which is actually a very fascinating aspect here. So we're talking about not, you shouldn't like sort of show up, you shouldn't like offer someone, a gift if you know he won't accept it. The Gemara says, fascinating, another leniency here. If you're doing this to honor the person you're offering it to, then it's allowed. So let's say you have this mourner and like the whole town's there, and you're showing up with like, there's like this big, these big jars of wine, and they're really mostly empty. But your intention is that you want everyone to see how you're honoring this person by bringing him a lot of wine. So even though there's a little amount of deception there, but if your intention is you want everyone to like think that you like really like him and he's a really great guy, that you're really trying to give him something, that's allowed. Actually, the Gemara says mishvil kvod mutter. If there's a lot of people there, it's mutter. And the concept there is that it has to do with, I think, two different aspects. First of all, it's gadol kavod habrios, that the sages in the Talmud, they place a lot of weight to honoring other people, and also I think the other aspect is that you're intending for his benefit, and your intention is good. Your intention is that's really the heter there, that you're intending for his benefit, and even if he feels he owes you something for it, I think he actually would owe you to a certain extent because you actually are giving him something. Might not be giving him the wine, you're just giving him that respect and the honor. So that would be a heter over there as well in these cases. So thank you everyone much for coming, and it's been a real pleasure to be back here.
la 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 la